Hello and welcome back to Newhouse Esports Update with Sammy St. Jean. I'm Andrew Macbeth, and we had a lot of action go down in the World's Finals for League of Legends. This was one of the most viewed programs I've ever seen on Twitch and YouTube. Over a million viewers concurrently at its peak worldwide. So this thing is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and it was also something you predicted correctly.
I did. For the first time ever, I actually predicted an outcome in the Worlds, and it just happened to be the last one, the most important one. DRX winning in a 3-2 absolute thriller, as you say, absolute scenes at the Chase Center in San Francisco. Everyone was playing out of their minds. It was peak League of Legends, really was. And we had plays from all sorts of different people in the top, middle, bottom, jungle, support. Literally everyone was playing the best they could possibly play. But it really came down to just a few minor things, or just a few major team fights that really determined the fate of that game.
What I'll say is I was able to watch some of it as well, and as someone who doesn't know a ton about League and starting to kind of understand it as it goes, one thing it seemed to notice is that since both sides were playing so cleanly and so organized, one mistake had such a massive impact on the game, one over-regress. And in these team fights, it seemed like they were very much centering on the Baron and on these drags. And in some of these fights, there was situations where they would overcommit to the Baron, get themselves trapped in a fight, and then that would kind of lose them the game in some certain circumstances. I know T1 did that in one situation in that final game, and it really came down to inches but it was a very exciting match. I did kind of find myself, I did indirectly pick them because you picked DRX, but I found myself very interested and very attracted to the idea of Faker getting that win and getting a win with this new squad kind of coming full circle. But gotta be happy for DRX as well. Exactly.
I mean, a lot of the major specifics with Kingen walking away as the MVP. I had initially picked Zeus from T1, but now that it is DRX walking away with the victory, Kingen being the MVP in the top lane, his plays on particularly the Camille were fantastic, really able to just show Zeus who the boss really is in the top lane. And Gumayushi, this kid is 19 years old. It's in his first or second major tournament, and of course it's Worlds with Faker, and he got 3 major steals on a Baron and a Drake as Varus, and Varus had a 4 games picked, 4 games won. And when I saw that T1 had picked Varus, I'm like, oh no, they're gonna win the game. It was so close. And then he gets this incredible steal on the Baron right after DRX win a major team fight. And at that point they go to the Baron, they might push and potentially take some of the Nexus turrets or even the game, and then Gumayushi, who stayed alive, gets that final snipe. Chase Center erupts, the casters are going wild, and unfortunately Cadriel did a little slip, dropping F-bomb on stream, but it was a little shielded by those screams. But this was definitely the greatest tournament and the greatest series I've ever seen. I don't think we can go any better than this.
DRX circled T1 like sharks, herding them in. T1 didn't find a response. Guma, can he steal it? Guma will have to fire right away. Gumayushi steals Baron to save this game.
Yeah, I picked a good one to tune into and to start following a little League of Legends for, certainly.
Well, it's definitely in the aftermath of League, of this finals finally ending, though. There's the problem with free agency. Now, of course, just like traditional sports, these players and these I guess e-athletes or athletes are very heavily under contract. They are playing for a team, and so some major names are walking away from some of the bigger teams. Particularly 2 players from Fnatic, Jankos and Flakit, are walking away from the teams. Jankos has been picked up by G2, his former team. And Flakit is still yet to be signed by a major team, as well as Upset, one of the best ADCs in the European region. And in the Korean side, there's also Ruler, who was on Gen G and fell to DRX. Very great player, secured a massive 4K in the game that I went to against Damwon Kia. and has played with, or against rather, Faker and won Worlds before, has mutually parted with Gen G and is looking elsewhere.
Okay.
So that's the scene from League of Legends, and just wondering, as Valorant season has also come to a close, what are you seeing from that end in terms of free agency?
Well, because the season ended kind of in that September, August area, they were able to really wrap up free agency with this introduction of franchising. Most of the teams are really set, and I'd say the biggest change, obviously, C9. We touched on that a little bit with bringing in Ye, as well as Sentinels bringing in some of the Loud representatives for the team that won championship for Valorant. But I would say overall they're kind of wrapped up. Some teams are finding their substitutes and stuff like that right now, but nothing major is really going to change yet. And it really comes down to the possibility of what I want to say is it's kind of tough because it's so new. Like, teams don't necessarily know how to attack it, and you only have 5 men, but these rosters are bigger than they had before there was franchising. So what you're seeing is some teams are expanding while some players are trying to stick it out with their teams that didn't get franchised because of the challengers option to try and win your way into franchising. So you're seeing this not full transition because some of these players are sticking it out with the orgs that maybe could have or should have gotten franchising that they might think, or that they think they have a really solid chance of earning that. So there's a lot to play out, but I think as far as free agency is concerned, Valorant's really simmering down, finding the final substitutes and stuff like that. But so I'd say the only really big change that has happened since everything has really started to kind of simmer down was 100 Thieves had Sean Garris step down. They had an assistant coach kind of replace him and step into there, but it's going to be a big change, especially with all the success they started to find in getting that team into the world stage and into that international stage through the Last Chance qualifier. Not having him is definitely going to be a hit, but they really have that team kind of established. They don't have as many moving parts as a lot of these other franchise teams. They don't have a lot of new players to implement. So I feel like 100 Thieves is going to be one of those teams that starts out really strong because they have that team continuity for the most part, really only interjecting cryosales.
I mean, it goes to show how well a team can really gain some cohesion when playing for a lot longer and under some franchising
Certainly.
clauses. So, especially as the concrete of Valorant is beginning to set, of course, we've been talking a lot about different types of games, and mostly we've been talking about League of Legends and Valorant and a little bit of Rocket League here and there, and we'll get back to that as soon as the majors begin later on in the year. But the major thing about esports is because it is so diverse. So instead of a vocab word of the week, we'll be talking a little bit about the different genres of games and how they are, how different they are, how they work, and in general some examples that you may want to watch out for. So the first one that we definitely want to talk about is the same genre as Valorant, the FPS or first-person shooter video games. Now, first-person shooter video games are games where you take the point of view of your own character and are often fighting with a gun or something similar, whether that is maybe like a throwing knife or a melee, something like that, where you take the point of view of your character and fight other people at the same time in an arena or some sort of map. Yes, exactly. And so, of course, Valorant is an example of this, and there are many other different games that are also fall under the banner of FPS.
And they also have a wide range of things. So, for example, you had experience with Rainbow Six Siege, but the fighting mechanics are so much different than Valorant, and that's something we kind of touched on when you were trying Valorant for the first time, is that just because they fall under the same genre does not mean they're that similar, aside from that FPS kind of umbrella. For example, in Rainbow Six Siege, you're going to have that mounting mechanic and the ability to lean around a corner, whereas in Valorant, that is non-existent, as you kind of learned from playing. Right. So there's a lot of variability in FPS games, but it's kind of under that umbrella of you taking that kind of position of your character and playing through that first-person perspective.
Exactly. And, some games can be very fast-paced, some can be very slow-paced. Yeah. The faster-paced games that I've played in the past are Overwatch, released by Blizzard in 2016, and now upgraded to Overwatch 2, which is essentially the same game. Unfortunately, that was a whole mess of a launch for the game. But I've been playing that game for a very long time and following the pro scene that has unfortunately died down. But that one is a very fast-paced, action-based game, but it still follows under the FPS umbrella but it is a very different playstyle to Valorant, which is a much slow, methodical, very tactically based shooter, as we were experiencing.
Yeah, no, certainly. And then you get games like Call of Duty that are all very fast-paced and still very different. I would say Call of Duty is probably the simplest in terms of trying to like get into, understand, and process what's going on, because it's, in many situations, it's just kind of, can you kill me before I kill you? And the organization isn't, there's definitely tactics in there, but not to the degree that you might see in Valorant.
Right, exactly. And another one that's a lot easier for people to understand are sports-based games. Now, a lot of these are games that are just the sport, but in video game form. And this includes, Madden, NBA 2K, FIFA, NHL, basically any major sport that you can just play and play the games that you watch on TV as the athletes that you idolize.
Yeah, and they tend to be very individualistic. For example, you don't have 11 people playing FIFA with you.
That
it's
would
just
be so chaotic.
It's something to watch, actually, now that I think about it. But it's more just like one person's ability to kind of craft their perfect team in their perfect formation and try to execute that as kind of the team manager. If you're thinking like you play a career mode in one of those sports games and you're controlling that full team, or you play a quick head-to-head game against your friend, idea is that you're controlling that one team, the full elements of that team, the organization, the roster, etc., and trying to put that on display.
Nice. And now you are, of course, a soccer fan. You are a particularly Tottenham Hotspurs fan. Do you, when you play FIFA, I'm assuming you play FIFA?
This is the first year I've taken off of FIFA solely because they changed a lot in terms of how team organization is made. And also, I just really didn't want to spend $60. But it's also so what they did is like they have a chemistry system in terms of crafting your team. So like you try to get full chemistry by having players on your team that can kind of link to other players in similar. So say you have a striker that plays. Say I'll use Tottenham example. So say you have Harry Kane starting at striker. He plays for Tottenham and he's English. So you want to try to find links based on another English or Tottenham player at left wing, at center, like etc. in these other positions. Okay. And they changed it to be, instead of having them connecting as kind of like a grid or like lines connecting each position on the field, they changed it to have an overall structure, and you have to hit these thresholds of like 3 players with the English nationality or something along those lines. And it's just very different, weird, and it didn't catch my eye as much. But this one is very tempting for a lot of people because of the World Cup element, which is a very exciting pull that'll be coming up very soon.
Yeah, and the World Cup itself coming up very soon, which I'm very excited to watch.
Yeah, that Black Friday game between England and the U.S. is definitely going to be a spectacle, to say the least.
It really is. Can't wait for it. Yeah. Now, of course, the final genre of games that I've really been talking about is the MOBA, or the multiplayer online battle arena, which is the genre that League of Legends is placed in, as well as its other variant by another company, Dota 2, which is not nearly as popular as League of Legends in terms of the esports scene, but a lot of people generally do play. Now, there is another genre that we failed to mention called the MMO. Would you like to explain what an MMO is?
Yeah, and this one's more something we want to touch on as like it's not that big in a competitive sense, but it's a massively multiplayer online game. MMO, massively multiplayer online. It seems very simplistic, but I'd say the biggest one that stands out is World of Warcraft. Played that a little bit. Wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but it is very cool in this element that you'll see. You kind of just have free reign over a type of character, or whether it be a race in World of Warcraft, and you can kind of craft your character, find the right equipment, etc., and be able to do that. But this is a very unique genre. I feel like the furthest maybe removed from the rest. Sports is pretty unique too, but like sports isn't unique necessarily to those who are watching a sport. Like it's not that different in terms of just that element, but this one being very individualistic. Except when you're trying to do these speed runs. Some people try to do like speed runs or try to run through these online, for example, raids in World of Warcraft, and those you get a little more of a team element because you have to do it with a group. It's impossible to do by yourself. But overall, this is, I would say, the most unique genre and most, I would say, free to your own desire. You can kind of play how you want. You can play it and grind it out and be really competitive and try and be the best in that game and the best in your general area, and fight other people online, or you can just do your own thing and do quests and have a good time and chill out. Like, you have a little bit more free reign, but it doesn't have that competitive scene like the others.
And hey, sometimes like video games don't have to be the most overly competitive thing. Sometimes they can just be something that you can just relax, play in your free time, and have a good time.
Yeah, certainly. And sometimes that's what you need, especially as Newhouse students. Sometimes you just need a break and you sit back and just do nothing for a little while.
Absolutely.
We don't really necessarily get that break, but personally, by own choice, we sign up and do all this stuff, such as this podcast in our free time. But sometimes you just need to sit back and take a break. And this is one of those games where you can kind of do that. You still kind of have that objective of maybe completing a quest or something like that, but you can kind of maybe take a load off and kind of just step out of your own world a little bit and into the new one.
Exactly. A little bit of escapism here.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Definitely need that right now. Well, as you were saying, definitely a time to take a bit of a break, a hiatus from stuff like that. This will be the last episode in the season of November. We'll be taking off a little bit for the holidays. We'll be coming back in December with a fresh look, a little new content for you guys. For now, though, that is all from today's Newhouse Esports update. And come back when we return with a full new batch of content.